Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltiziak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. Welcome to another episode. In episode 234, we discussed the Detroit Lions' 16-9 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday Night Football. We're going to discuss the offensive woes, the incredible defensive effort, and give our perspectives on the coaching decisions in the game, plus what this might mean for the team moving forward. That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Jameer Gibbs, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Sports Writer of the Year, James Cook. He is also the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. James, thanks for joining me today to talk a little Lions football.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me on. After a loss, not as cool necessarily, but we'll get through it, right?
That we will, and we're recording a day late because you were out hunting and Coach was out traveling. He's en route on the way back right now, no doubtably, probably breaking down some film and maybe cursing on in the friendly skies as he's frustrated at some things he saw.
I can imagine nothing else coming from him.
Yes. Well, we will break this down. We will move forward. As we do that, we want to let you know that our show is brought to you by our friends at Roaster Jack Coffee Company in Traverse City. They've been roasting incredible beans since 1999, folks. Perfect for your morning cup and fueling the whole crew. Fresh to order at roasterjack.com. If you use the code LIONS, get you 20% off the order. Roaster Jack, brew great coffee and go Lions. All right, James, overall reaction in a sentence or two. What do you got?
Bring back John Morton. I'm just kidding.
That is a very reactive thought. Yes. Okay. I'm glad you said the just kidding at the end.
100% just kidding.
My overall reaction is the defense was robbed and was robbed twice. Such an outstanding defensive effort by the Detroit Lions, and it was robbed due to the offensive issues and the penalty called at the end of the game. Those two things just robbed them of everything they did out there. It was incredible. Okay, well, let's start hitting on the pivotal moments of this game, turning points, things that were important. I want to start with the first two drives of the game by the Detroit Lions defense. Forced Philadelphia to punt on the opening drive, and then after an interception in their own territory by the Lions, they held the Eagles to a field goal, James. That's 3 points in the first two drives when the Lions have oftentimes given up 7 to start the opening drive in a game.
Yeah, the defense just played phenomenal pretty much the whole game. Kept them in this game. The offense obviously struggled, but the defense was just pretty top notch. I think pretty much from start to finish. They had a short field a couple of times and were able to minimize damage from that, and didn't really give up a whole lot of like long drives or anything, sustained drives to the Eagles, who have a very good offense. They're not injury riddled like the Lions are, aside from they lost Lane Johnson during the game. The Eagles are actually kind of remarkably healthy. So that was a huge advantage for them coming in, as well as the weather conditions.
Yeah, and we'll talk about how much we like so many different elements of it, but just holding them to 3 points those first two drives was huge, because then when the Lions eventually did go down and they were losing 6-0, they had a pass completion, 2 of them, 1 drive, touchdown. That was it. Just 2 passes, 1 drive. They have a touchdown, huge touchdown to Jamison Williams, but then 15-yard penalty. So that was a big deal right there. Coach weighed in on that. He thought, if you're up 7-6 versus tied 6-6, it's got a little bit of a different feel to it. It was a little bit of a bummer when that happened, and it took away a little bit of that excitement because it made the extra long, extra point going into that wind, and it just complicated things a little bit.
Yeah, and ultimately made it so that they never led in the game. So you're always chasing. So yeah, that was unfortunate. I know technically it's a part of the rules that you can't touch the goalposts as part of a celebration, but it's like, why? Because of Marquez Colston hiding a cell phone, or whoever it was that hid a cell phone in the padding one time. I think Terrell Owens did that, but I think it was Colston or somebody from the Saints who did something with the pads or hiding something in there too. And I'm like, okay, so we made a rule about that because of Terrell Owens.
Yeah, there was that uh, rule that did happen. You are right about that. And I got to tell you, Vi Sikahema. Do you remember Vi Sikahema, James? We're going back a long time here,
Hmm.
and
Eagles kick
and
returner
he was a kick returner, right?
for
And
the Eagles as well.
for the Eagles. And once this play happened, I know rules change over time the NFL. And so I get that rules have changed, so that doesn't apply. But I still remember when Vi Sikahema had an 87-yard touchdown return. I think it was a punt return, not a kick return, but he returned it. And he just took the goalpost like a boxing bag and just went right to it and jabbed it. And afterwards, they asked him why he did that. And he said, so, and this is all based on memory, folks. He said it was so he could show people he had other options if the NFL didn't work out or something like that. Um, but that was pretty memorable. Obviously, rules have changed, and I knew you couldn't dunk over it. I didn't know you couldn't hug it though, and so it is unfortunate that that was a big play. For the positive side on them connecting on two big plays, and like Campbell even said, it was like, hey, maybe the offense has something going here. It's suddenly a tie game, and it really gave you a different feel. Like, okay, after struggling, the Lions are in it, and now it's a tie game. Um, so that was a pivotal moment for there.
Yeah,
What
I
else do you
think
want?
so.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was. Yeah, that is the rule. I think you're not allowed to use any part of the goalpost for a celebration. So don't tell that to Kingsley football. After people probably around the state heard about that goalpost story. But in the NFL, you're not allowed to do anything to the goalposts.
No. All right. So what else you got for a turning point or something pivotal in the game?
I think just in general, it was like several moments put together as one, which is the not converting on fourth down ever. 0 for 5, and what was it, 3 for 12 or 3 for 15 or something like that on third down?
3 for 13 on third
3 for
down,
13.
0 for 5 on fourth down. Yeah.
It was bad. Yeah. And one of those failed fourth downs is the punt, the fake punt, um, counts against that. So I think that those just in totality, I mean, you look at if they just pick up one or two of those, the odds of them winning this game go up big time. I
They
think.
do. Yeah. And here's a couple things about those. One, uh, if you're watching the game, they didn't have a lot of lead time up on that punt, the fake punt. It was only about 4 or 5 seconds. It wasn't like the camera was on there for 10 or 12 like it sometimes is. But as soon as the screen came up, I said to my wife, I go, they're gonna do a fake punt right here. You knew it. You had that feeling. The problem is, and Coach talks about this later about not liking this, is you got to audible out of that because as we've all come to hear, Philly had their top line defense in there on that play. And it didn't even look like they were going for a punt on that one or a punt block. It looked like they were going to stop a run from the get go. Isn't that what you saw?
Yeah, and the Lions didn't really run out the fake very well either. I mean, Jack Fox wasn't very convincing that the ball was going to him. And so and they just kind of played into Dan Campbell's tendencies. Dan Campbell has to realize that he has tendencies, and one of those things that if you're a Lions fan and you know what you've picked up on is that in big games he's going to call trick plays. He's going
Yeah.
to do it. He doesn't in games where he comes in very confident that we should win this game and we'll just win this game based on talent. But in close games, it's like he wants to flip it into the Lions' favor with trick plays, which is all fine and good, but he's also got to be a little bit aware that other teams see that tendency.
Well, yeah, and it's both sides, right? It's all right. Well, people are going to give him a hard time for doing this, but there's been games this year where we've gotten multiple touchdowns on fourth downs, and so it works and it doesn't work. But also, these fourth downs weren't 4th and 12s what we're going for. They were fourth and quite manageable. Unfortunately, we didn't manage. And we're going to get into dissecting all that about our thoughts on that a little bit deeper, but those were pivotal things. Um, Another pivotal moment I thought was right after the Jamison Williams touchdown, actually, James. There were maybe 6 minutes left in the half at that point, and you mentioned it. The defense did not give up many sustained drives, but they gave up one sustained drive right here. And that allowed Philadelphia to go all the way down the field, get a touchdown before halftime, take a 13-7 lead, and leave like no time left on the clock for the Lions to do anything. Campbell talked about how he thought about taking a timeout late there to try and get a little bit of time, but he ultimately didn't. But that right there, just, between the penalty, missed extra point, and them coming down to get the touchdown, it kind of took away some of that little bit of momentum it looked like the Lions were maybe going to get.
That drive was kind of a killer. Puts them up 13-6 with 16 seconds to go before halftime. And they did get one touchdown kind of called back on the Saquon run where they originally called it a touchdown and then they said that his knee was down, so they were able to do the tush push. It was about the only time actually in the game that they were really successful with the tush push.
Yeah,
Uh,
yep, and we're going to get into that because that's something another way, another one more reason to applaud this defense. So, uh,
yeah.
but those were all big turning points in the game, and
Mhm.
we also have to talk about that last one at the end of the game. That was a pivotal moment, even though the Lions' offense had struggles much of the game. They should have had one more chance with the ball in the final minute, 12 seconds there, James. That pass interference penalty call that everyone's been talking about doesn't mean the Lions would have won the game if this gets called correctly. The problem is, and we've talked about this in multiple episodes leading up to this, is there is an officiating problem in the NFL where things are not being consistently correct. And this was a perfect example of that. You never want to win or lose a game because of a bad call by a referee. You want it to be played out the way it should. We saw it happen in Kansas City, and they corrected it. Okay, we just want the procedures followed, and maybe they need to change the procedure on how to fix something like this. But the offense should have had another chance. And hey, we saw them score in 2 plays in 57 seconds earlier in this game. So you can't say the Lions didn't have that opportunity or couldn't do it as bad as they looked most of this game because it was pretty tough sledding. Um, but that penalty just and it was universally, I think, complained about.
Yeah, I even saw Eagles fans saying, "Yeah, that was a bad call. Like we shouldn't have gotten that." I haven't seen a single tweet out of all the I bookmarked dozens of tweets right after the game about this and people commenting on it. Not a single person that I saw tweeting about it said that it was a good call. Everybody just ripped on it. I mean, you had
Has the NFL released a video explaining why it was okay yet?
They did not. They did have Alex Kemp do a uh, talk to the pool reporter after the
Yeah.
game. And he just explained that they thought that Rocky Sin had grabbed his arm, but if you look at the replay, there's no
Yeah.
grabbing. There's just hand fighting. Where they're both pushing at each other and way more so by the receiver than Rocky Sin. So you've had Shannon Sharp, Albert Breer, Darius Butler, Will Compton, Kurt Warner, Warren Sharp, Mike Golick Jr., and many others among the NFL celebrities who were just ripping on that call on Twitter. I mean, it was pretty universal. Even a cornerback from the Minnesota Vikings who benefited from this loss to the Detroit Lions, Isaiah Rodgers was very critical of it. Um, so it's pretty universal that was just a horrible, horrible call. And a lot of people are like, it's not even defensive pass interference. It's offensive pass interference.
Right. Right. Yep. And we've kind of
Because
gone around on this in circles. We've heard it a ton. And the frustrating part is um, it was a pivotal moment. The Lions did what they were supposed to do. Third and
Mhm.
8. They stopped them and they were going to get the
And
ball back.
yeah, and it was great coverage. That was a great play by Rocky Sin.
Yeah.
That was a good rep for him. Forced an incompletion. It should have been an offensive pass interference, in my opinion. There also should have been an offensive pass interference called on AJ Brown on that touchdown right before the halftime on that drive. That probably would have stalled that drive, but that wasn't called as well.
All right. Well, I also I want to say just what we're about to get into what we liked. I like the way Rock Yasin handled himself after that. You can tell he's a veteran and he handled himself really well. And you saw the big like I want to say it was like a smile of disbelief, like you're really going to call that. And but he handled himself well. He handled himself like we would hope one would. And can't say I would handle myself with that much class. So hands off,
I don't,
clapping to him.
I don't think I would have.
Yeah.
I would not have handled that well.
All right. Well, folks, as we're getting started, as we're doing this reminder, like, subscribe to this if you're watching us on YouTube. Tell your friends about us. And if you're listening on any of the audio channels, and please like and follow us as well. All right. Well, we got to talk about what we liked. And Rock Sin and the defense is what we liked. And you got to remember, guys, there's no Kirby Joseph, no Terrion Arnold, no DJ Reed in the secondary. That's three of your top four guys in the secondary not playing. Yet you held Jalen Hurts to a 63.8 rating. He had 135 yards passing. The team had 3.7 yards a carry rushing. Saquon Barkley was held to 83 yards. It wasn't perfect. Tank Bigsby did do a little bit of damage on the ground with a few carries. But the team was held in pretty darn good check. Like you said, James, only one sustained drive for a touchdown. They gave up 3 points to the Philadelphia Eagles in the second half of this football game. This was extremely incredible play and scheming by the Detroit Lions defense.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people are going to be very critical of Jared Goff in this game, and I think there's some validity to that. But if you look at Jalen Hurts, are you going to apply that same level to him? Because Jalen Hurts played no better than Jared Goff in that game. I would argue worse. The Eagles were lucky to win that game with as bad as Jalen Hurts played at quarterback, and really only was able to use his legs once. Didn't get the tush push, all that kind of stuff. So that's another kind of thing. I think a lot of people are really ripping on Jared Goff, and an NFL quarterback will have a bad play. Back to the defense, though. This was the third time this season that Kelvin Shepard's defense has held an opponent under 275 points or 275 yards, and they've still lost.
Wow.
The most yards they've given up this season was to the Chiefs, and that was only 355.
Yeah, and
I'm
that
pretty
was
sure
the
every.
only two-score loss the Lions have had this. Oh no, they lost to the Packers by 14, they lost to the Chiefs by 13, then to the Vikings by 3, and then this one.
Mhm.
So yeah. And that's the other thing too, is think about this for a minute, and we'll get into what, as bad as the offense played and as futile as it was, we lost to the defending Super Bowl champs who have one of the best records in the NFL at their place by a single score. And so, the defense is playing at a level that I think a lot of people weren't expecting before this season started. I think that, we expected the offense to be much better than it is, and it hasn't quite been there. But the defense is currently exceeding expectations, even with injuries going in there. And one
Mhm.
of those things they did, James, was stopping the tush push. Now, I think they got it on the touchdown. That's how they got the touchdown.
Mhm.
It was successful there, but I don't think I've seen a team stop Philly like this. Trevor Nowaski came in on one from the side, the linebackers right on the side there, and almost ripped the ball out of his hand, but he was there for the stop. The Lions had better success against this than anybody else, and you can tell they did because Philly went for it on 4th and 1 at their own 30-yard line, leading by 10. And so that just showed you the confidence Philly had in it. And the Lions are pretty successful at stopping it today or at that game.
Yeah, and they went about it differently than any other team has tried. We've seen teams just try to load up the defensive line with big guys in the front and try to get low and all that, and it's worked very minimally, I would say. We've seen guys just try to guess the snap count, like Frankie Louvu in the playoffs last year, until he was warned that they were just going to give him the touchdown. Uh, we've seen all kinds of things. What the Lions did was almost completely different than anybody else. I mean, they used the defensive linemen, to try to get a stalemate up front and all that, but they blitzed somebody basically off the edges and had that guy hit Hurts from the side
Yeah.
to stop any forward momentum and to stop him from being able to get that second push. You saw Branch do it once, I think, on one of the ones that they stopped. You saw Nowaski do it once on one of the ones that they stopped, and I think that was huge. If they, and Roy Lopez in the middle of that was phenomenal, stopping the tush push. I mean, he just did not give up any ground right in the middle of that. So I think that was also a huge thing. But the Lions just came up with a new way to stop it. The Lions were the one team that the Eagles played this year that did not vote to ban the tush push.
And I had a feeling, I mean, when they asked Dan Campbell about it, he said, "Well, we're not going to practice it against ourselves." But you knew that they probably had some sort of scheme they were going to try. Didn't know if it was going to be successful or not, but you knew they were studying it somehow. And, copycat league, we'll see if somebody else takes what the Lions did and try that or not. But, the Eagles were 4 of 15 on third down. I mean, the Lions were 3 for 13. One more and two extra chances. I mean, that's not great. And they were 0 for 1 on fourth down. The Lions defense did well in this game. Coach even talked about great job on the tush push by the defense. He said the defense was lights out except for a couple explosives and some missed assignments for freelancing or maybe not knowing what the situation was. He also loved the different packages they used, and it kept people fresh and kept people playing to their strengths. So that was just really good on the defensive side there. The defense deserves so much credit for this game. Again, 3 points in the second half. Jalen Hurts being held to that. Yeah, A.J. Brown got some catches, but Devontae Smith had one, and Barkley had one, and Goddard had two. It was a very good effort. And like you said, Jalen Hurts did not play that well. His rating was not great. And I'm going to read this. I have a friend in Philadelphia, and he's like, Philly sports fans are freaking out after the win because the team's offense can't score. The coach went on the radio and called the fans spoiled and said they need to enjoy the win and enjoy being 8-2. So I think at home, Philly fans are hearing it, folks. And that was after a win. And keep in mind, if you're criticizing Jared Goff, and hey, there is some criticism out there for the way he played, the team's offense played collectively as well. But Jalen Hurts, James, you said it. His numbers are not better than Goff's. He has one less interception, but he has one less touchdown. And, the QB, the rating is very similar for them, and neither is anything to brag about.
Yeah, for sure. In AJ Brown in the first half, he had 6 catches in the first half, which was more, I think, than he had in any game this season. And then he only had one in the second half. They were able to just take him out of the game in the second half after a pretty strong first half by him. And Devontae Smith was pretty much missing in action the whole game. Um, and Dallas Goddard, did a little bit here and there. They were able to kind of make Saquon Barkley look pretty pedestrian, and make this offense, which is a very good offense, look not great.
Yeah,
So what the Lions defense did was exceptional, I would say. You can say a lot of the opposite things about the offense, but what the defense did is great and something that I think the Lions can hang their hat on. And you defense wins championships.
it
And
does.
this offense still has the capability of scoring 40 or 50 in any game.
They do have that potential. They do have that capability if we can get things put together. One thing they did put together was Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs and JMO, they both contributed well, but Jahmyr Gibbs especially, 107 yards receiving. Jared Goff had 255 yards receiving. I thought he'd hit that 300 level. And as bad as things went because of those passes to Jahmyr Gibbs, and a lot of them were those short ones, but I like it because a lot of them were the short ones where it went out past the line of scrimmage. but we saw Jameer Gibbs using his vision downfield after catching the ball. And, coach even said it too. Great job getting the ball into the flats of a flare route. It was an extension of the run game against a great defense. And it was one of those things where Goff had to get rid of the ball quickly. And I thought they were going to do a little bit more of that and whatnot. But Gibbs kept them in it. They just, as Campbell talked about, they had some long drives. They just couldn't finish some of those drives into points. And early on, they didn't want to take the field goals because it was, and I'm going to agree with Campbell on this. They were in some weird situations as to where they were on the field with some of those things. And so it was tough. Like, you're kind of like, it's going to be a real long field goal or it's going to be a real short punt. And that happened a couple times. And
Mhm.
again, there was a time they went for the touchdown when they were within the 10-yard line, and that didn't work out. But Jameer Gibbs was an offensive weapon tonight or last night when the game happened, and that's why the Lions drafted him.
Yeah, yeah, and you've seen in these last two games since Dan Campbell took over play calling duties, and he said that he's going to call plays for the rest of the season as well. That the screen game works now.
Yeah.
For the first how many weeks when with John Morton calling, he was just calling screen after screen after screen, and they just weren't going anywhere. Suddenly, in 2 weeks, and obviously the Commanders' defense played some role in that, but it worked against the Eagles' defense, which is very good. So I think that's another good point there for the Lions. That the screen game is working. Gibbs is a weapon of weapons in that screen game. And so I think that's another thing that they can really just say, this is a thing our offense is going to be really good at, even if other things are not working.
Yeah. And again, if you have Gibbs and JMO doing some stuff, that should help out some other areas. But all right. Well, I want to give a thank you to Roaster Jack Coffee Company for sponsoring and supporting this show. If you guys want to order fresh, roasted to order coffee, go to roasterjack.com, use the code LIONS. You'll get 20% off your order. All right. Well, the Lions didn't win, which means there's going to be some things we didn't like. I already mentioned that first one, which is the Eagles drive down after the Lions get that touchdown. And they took all that time and they got 7 right before half. Like you said, because of that missed extra point, the Lions did not lead in this game ever. Again, I think that right there took a lot of momentum out of it. And then suddenly you're playing catch up again. You just caught up. Then they go take the lead. You go into halftime, and then you got to play catch up again coming out in the third quarter.
Yeah, and I think missing that extra point also played a factor in those going forward on fourth downs and some of those in between areas, like you mentioned, because that was a 53-yard extra point because of the 15-yard penalty
Yeah.
on the celebration. So, and with it being incredibly windy, it wasn't very well working. It wasn't working. I mean, you saw that the Eagles weren't kicking long field goals either. Elliott had, I think, a short one, and one other one that was kind of mid distance, I think, but nothing like in the 50s.
So, yeah, as long as he did hit one that was 49 late. He had a
Yeah,
49
the late
yarder.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and I
and
think the
Bates
wind
had a
had kind
late
of died
one.
down by then.
It
Yeah.
had, yes, definitely. Because they showed the video early in the pregame and what it was doing, and that was pretty incredible. Um, Obviously, we kind of hit on this, but the Lions offense was 2 for 13 on third down, or 3 for 13, and 0 for 5 on fourth down. As coach said, that fake punt early, probably a fake safe punt return, but also that defense was on there. He goes, they kept the defense on. He goes, he's not sure if the Lions have a call to get out of it. It seems like they should have one and that they should have done it. Uh, but on those fourth downs, coach talked about this, and I think this was pretty big, James, is uh, nothing was going smooth when they got into those fourth downs. So it wasn't like they were in a tempo, is what coach said. And I agree with that. They didn't have a tempo going in. So it wasn't like, oh, well, we've got a couple plays and then it didn't work. So then we're just going to go one more. Everything was work, like hard work on offense. And that just made it, even though the fourth downs were manageable, it made them that much more difficult to get.
Yeah, similar with the Eagles. I mean, the defense was not making it easy on the Eagles, and the Eagles defense was not making it easy on Detroit's offense. So I mean, making them 0 for 5 on fourth down, it's very uncharacteristic for the Lions.
Yeah.
Uh, Last year, I can't remember what their percentage was on fourth down, but it was pretty insanely high for the NFL. Uh, so I think that that's got to be something that's stands out as a number that probably won't happen again. I would think the rest of the season. So you got to figure that that's going to be much better down the
Yeah.
road. That this is just the outlier. And the Eagles defense had something to do with that, of course. The Eagles defense played very well. Their defensive line was phenomenal. And and the Lions had their struggles with the offensive line and and getting 2 yards when the other team knew you needed 2 yards, and so it's it's something I don't like, but it's something also that I'm not like the sky is falling over. It's that's fixable.
Yeah, I mean, Coach pointed out the Lions outgained them. I believe his notes say 142 yards to 45 yards in the third quarter, but no points. And they just needed to make a play. Just one play could have changed it. Campbell talked about that. Um, Connecting. There were drop passes, there were bad throws, and the offensive line struggled at times. All three of those things combined. I mean, 14 of 37, Jared Goff, worst pass completion percentage in a game in his career, I believe. Um, it was a combination of things. Sometimes the ball was just a little bit off and the receiver didn't make the play. Another time or two, or multiple times, the ball was much further off. Or here's where I was going, the ball was batted at the line of scrimmage like at least 5 times. And that really impacted things that led to the first interception of the game or the only interception of the game. And so all those things culminated in almost making it feel like the Lions had to play tighter and the room for error was just that much smaller.
Yeah, yeah. The batted balls was the thing. I mean, they had five just between Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, the two defensive tackles. So their entire secondary only had five.
Okay,
But those two
yeah.
defensive tackles had five, and they did a good job of just getting an arm up. If you can't beat Penny Sewell, just get an arm up. There's ways to combat that too. If you're an offensive lineman, chop the arms, don't let him get them up, all those kind of things. But they weren't they weren't concentrating on that obviously in this game because I think that definitely made a difference. They had one or two of those on those third and fourth downs. That was critical. Just wasted plays, and also they were getting pressure on Goff a lot. I think he was pressured on 41% of his dropbacks or something like that,
Wow.
which is a lot. And so he had somebody in his face a lot. So a lot of those throws were rushed. He was trying to get rid of it earlier than he wanted to, maybe earlier in the route. Um, and so it wasn't maybe in the perfect spot for the receiver because he just had to get rid of it.
Yeah, and Coach Campbell talked about how they had never really seen a problem with it, so they didn't really practice for it. But he figured what Philadelphia did was they basically figured they got as far as they could on some of the plays, and then they just looked up and batted the ball, put their hands up, knowing that there's only so much time to get the play off. Um, but that's something they'll take a look at again. He said it hadn't been a problem before, but there's ways they can work against it so it doesn't become a thing. James, I want to get your take on this. Uh, David Montgomery, Jameer Gibbs, short running situations up the middle. Now, I I see their skill sets overlapping quite a bit. I think you do as well. It's not thunder and lightning. Yes, they both have similar traits and different traits. Um, but we saw them try to run Gibbs a couple times on third and short and fourth and short, I believe. And Jameer Gibbs has another gear that Dave Montgomery has, but Dave Montgomery is 5'11", 230. Jameer Gibbs is 5'9", 202. And so it seems that in those situations, if the defense knows what you're probably going to do and you're probably going to do it, it seems like maybe you want to put Montgomery in that situation. Uh, what are your thoughts on that? I'm leaning towards it because of the type of player. Few people run as tough as David Montgomery. And that was his reputation when he came to Detroit from Chicago. And I feel like you're just not maximizing your strength opportunities in a specialized situation like that.
Yeah, and on those situations where you only needed a yard or two, David Montgomery has pretty much been money for you. So I don't understand why going away from it. The one thing I can understand about it is that um, you're hoping to get more than the first down. With
Right.
Montgomery, if the play works, you get the first down, and then you move to your next set of downs. If you're doing it with Gibbs, I think what you're playing for is that they don't the run blitz doesn't hit where he's going, and he's gone.
Sure.
Like it's a touchdown. So it's whether you're playing for a first down or a touchdown, essentially. Me, I'm taking that first down with David Montgomery all the time because you got so many other weapons on that offense. Give me 4 downs to work with. And I think they should be doing that more.
Yeah, and again, a couple of these were inside the red zone, so it just seemed like that was the right package to go with. Again, I do think Gibbs can run between the tackles. A lot of people I know I've talked to, they think he's just an outside exclusive runner. I don't think that's the case. He does have a toughness about him, but that specialized thing and that size, David Montgomery's that guy.
Exactly.
Um, Coach did point out on one of Gibbs' runs, though, something that jumped out to him. The guy's already been looking at film. He said Sewell was pulling and he turned to try and chip the defensive tackle. And coach says if he continues and just goes towards the safety, he thinks there's a chance that that goes for a touchdown. So, coach breaking down some film on that one. He pointed out the defense, if I've got this right, no turnovers in 2 weeks. And so Campbell even mentioned that they were hoping to get a turnover or something in this. Coach pointed out Angers kick coverage was better, but the return game still needs work. And yeah, I've unfortunately been of that feeling for a little while that the special teams is just not a special feeling as it used to be
No,
2 seasons ago.
no, definitely not. Yeah, they go to the thing on the no turnovers. Yeah, that's one of the things that they didn't do. The Lions started 4-1 this season when the defense generated 9 turnovers in those
Yeah.
games. Since then, they've had just 3 turnovers in the last 5 games, and they've been 2-3 in that span. So, if you want to boil it down to really simple things, that's one of the things that's been pretty consistent. When the defense forces turnovers, the Lions win, and
And
and they
Kirby
do.
Joseph has missed 4 of those last 5 games.
Yep, and he's your turnover maker. Yep.
Yeah.
They're 4-0 when the defense
Mm.
forces 2 turnovers or more. So, I mean, that's got to be one of your things. But the defense played pretty lights out. That's like about the only thing I think you can really criticize the Lions defense for is that they didn't force any turnovers. The Eagles did fumble once or twice, but they recovered them.
Yeah, they got some pretty good bounces right back to him on those.
Yeah.
We've kind of hit on the Goff struggles a little bit. There's multiple reasons for that. We talked about the pressure rate. We talked about being off target, having to move and throw, having drops, having batted passes. Um, you know, another thing is when he threw one to St. Brown towards the end zone that wasn't even close in the end zone, 5 yards upfield, right at the goal line was Brock
Mhm.
Wright wide
Yeah,
open,
exactly. Yeah.
wide open. And
Yep.
so quarterback, hardest position to play, but he was open, and so that would have been a game changer right there. And so, uh, it was tough to see those inconsistencies and the Campbell said everybody was just off. It was off, and it was. And I think Goff to St. Brown was off the most glaring thing. 12 targets, 2 catches, 42 yards. It's just it wasn't working there for one reason or another. Really good coverage on St. Brown. Also, some of the passes weren't quite there, and St. Brown just didn't make a couple plays as well.
Yeah. Well, they had Quinyon Mitchell on him,
Yep.
one of the best cover corners in the league. I believe he was 0 for 6 on targets to St. Brown when being covered by Mitchell. So that's part of it. The other thing is, Amon-Ra St. Brown is Jared Goff's safety blanket. When you start hearing that timer in your head as a quarterback, he's like, you know what? I'm just going to throw it to where St. Brown's supposed to be. I
Yeah.
think it's just his natural tendency. And especially in this game because his other safety blanket, Sam Laporta, was not there.
Yeah, and that was huge. Sam Laporta being gone, especially in those goal line situations. And we looked last week against Washington. We were so excited to see how many different people caught the football for the Lions, and how much of a spreading out it was because it meant there wasn't too much on anybody's plate. Well, Gibbs and JMO had a total of 9 catches. The rest of the team had a total of 5 catches. And so, Tesla had 1 target, no catches. Brock Wright had 2. Monty had 1, and St. Brown had 2. I mean, again, you're looking for more contribution of things being spread out, so it's a balanced attack, and teams can't just take those main guys out of the arsenal. Um, but back to Laporta, he's on IR too. That's the other thing, and we don't know when he'll be back. Campbell still was elusive. He just said it's a back thing. But to put him on IR, that means 4 weeks right away. It means it could be something.
Yeah, it's
It
a
is
back
something.
injury, and that's all he said. He
Yeah,
hasn't really uh, expounded on that at all, and just says it's a back injury, and that's about it. And it also sounds kind of ominous in that he's not promising that he'll be back this season. So it could even be longer than the 4 weeks on IR, but they're going to have at least 3 more weeks without Sam Laporta. Um, and one
yeah,
thing I was going to mention about the Goff that I'll go back to and then go back to Laporta is
totally.
he also only completed 7 of 27 passes past the line of scrimmage.
Jared
25 point,
Goff.
yeah, 25.9% behind the line of scrimmage. That's the lowest per completion percentage in that category for any quarterback since 2016.
Wow,
Any quarterback in any game, including Shedeur Sanders last week.
you had to
Uh,
go there.
to go to to go to Brock Wright, and Brock Wright, I mean, Campbell gave him a vote of confidence, and said, we have complete faith in him. And then
Yeah,
he wasn't particularly great in this game. He was wide open, as you mentioned, on that crossing route underneath St. Brown, in the end zone, and would have been able to pretty much just walk in um,
yeah.
on that one fourth down play. Other than that, he was one of the lowest rated players in PFF scores for the Lions for the whole game. Um, and then the good news is it sounds like DJ Reed could be back this week. Um,
Nice.
plus Rodrigo, which is maybe helps the special teams. They're also opening the 21-day window for Khalil Dorsey. So he could be back in the next week or two. And that gives him another valuable returner and special teams player to maybe help those special teams. And then Davenport and Josh Pascal, it sounds like are not very far behind them as far as coming back either. So there are reinforcements on the way. And one of the good news things from this game is that there did not appear to be any serious injuries. Um, they did have Ratledge, left the game for a little while, came back. Same thing with Sewell, looked to be kind of um, favoring something for a while.
Yeah.
But he was generally pretty good in this game, aside from that the one time that he got beat by it was the defensive end that they just acquired at the deadline.
Was it Jalen Phillips?
Phillips, yeah, he got beat by him on one of the
Yeah.
big plays in the game.
Well, yeah, and Tristan Colon came in for Ratledge, and Colon's actually proving to be a very valuable depth piece already here.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, the offensive line, among other things, there were many aspects, but that didn't work out as well. That caused all that extra pressure. Campbell seemed to not be overly phased by it. Now that could just be a front he's putting on in front of the media, but he tends to be pretty straightforward. Uh, he thinks there's things they can do and adjust. And he also was like more time to play together. Well, Coyote hasn't been playing all season with them, right? So there is that idea of them gelling a little bit more, and they face a tough test. So we'll get into that a little bit more as what the outlook looks like. We hit on that final penalty pretty hard already. Just it's tough when a game ends like that. Uh, any other final things you didn't like before we hit play of the game?
I want to read Chris Collinsworth's quote from the
Okay.
broadcast when they showed the
Yes.
replay. They have the play happens, they throw the penalty flag, and then TV shows the replay of the play. And Chris Collinsworth says, "Oh, come on, that is terrible. That is an absolutely terrible call that is going to decide this football game. If anything, it's an offensive push."
Yep. Yep. I'm not going to disagree with any of that.
Yep. And so the refereeing problem, this is one thing I think is that coaches should be able to use challenges to argue anything, including saying that was not a penalty. You're limited on on the number of penalties or times you can challenge anyway, so why can't you challenge anything? I would really like to hear somebody higher up in the NFL tell fans, like their 7-year-olds, why every play is not reviewable.
But don't you remember for like 2 seasons they let you challenge pass interference calls, and those didn't really go that well, so they kind of stopped doing it. But they did allow that for a couple of seasons after. I think that was after the Minnesota Saints playoff game. So okay, let's go play the game. My play of the game is fourth quarter, 4th and 1. The Eagles have the ball. They're up 10 at their own 30, and they do the tush push, and the Lions stop them on fourth down. It was the play of the game for me because Philly thought they could just do it and run over the Lions. It showed the defense had not given up. It gave the Lions still a chance to stay in this game. And, you know, more than three-quarters of the way through the game, no matter what, the defense was not halting. And so that was my play of the game. How about you?
Yeah, I think this is Jamison Williams' touchdown. The touchdown itself was great. Was a great play. It was also their only touchdown of the game,
Yeah,
unfortunately. And then you had the goalpost hug afterwards, which cost them the 15 yards, made the extra point from 53, which in that win Bates missed, and they never got to lead in that game because of it.
for sure. Okay, some storylines coming out of this game. All right. The Lions went for it on fourth down 5 times. Was it too much? You kind of talked a little bit about them getting to know some of the tendencies of the Lions, but and I mentioned I called the fake punt, and if I'm calling that from my living room, I'm sure I'm not the only one because there's a lot of people out there smarter than me who
Yeah.
probably saw this. Philly had their defensive line in there, but in general, going for it 5 times on fourth down, is that too much? Basic question, basic statement, but you can go as deep as you want into this. What are you thinking?
I don't think so. That's Dan Campbell. That's what he's going to do. The Lions have been very good at it. The Eagles just played very well on defense and were able to stop it. And a couple of those were ones where, their defensive pass rush got to Jared Goff, and he threw a little bit earlier than he was supposed to, or not supposed to, but would ultimately like to on a play like that to let the route develop. And so surprise receivers and all kinds of things like that. But I mean, 5 times is not that unusual actually for Dan Campbell really in a game. If four really when you take out the fake punt.
Yeah.
So the fake punt, like you said, there's a history there and and a tendency. The Obviously going on fourth downs is a tendency too, but it's not like a trick play
Right.
that they're able to sniff out. You know that they're going for fourth down, obviously. But so
Yeah.
I don't think that 5 times is too much. No, I mean,
All right. Well,
like we said, if they get one or two of those, completely different ball game.
yeah, and I think a lot of people are oversimplifying this because I heard somebody ask him a question, like the second or third time it didn't work, did it hesitate you to go for it again? And I think that's oversimplification of the situation. Okay. Just because something didn't work, as in like going for it, it's not like you're running the exact same play, right? Just because
Hmm.
something didn't work, as in like you weren't able to pick, well, did you decide not to run the ball because you ran it 4 times earlier? No, you're going to run the ball because that's what you do in football. You run and you pass. And what I'm trying to get to on this is just because you weren't successful earlier doesn't mean you won't be successful now because it's a gainage of yards. It's not you're running the exact same play and trying to get the exact same play to work. Here's the other thing, James. The Lions gave up 16 points on defense. The only touchdown they gave up on defense was after a kickoff. Every time the Lions went for it on fourth down and didn't get it, the most they ever gave up was a field goal. And that only happened twice because the first field goal came after an interception. So you get rid of the interception and the drive for a touchdown. The most they could have given up is 6 points. The defense was playing that well. The offense needed those extra opportunities to try to score. Going for it on fourth down did not cost the Lions. Anyone that's writing that, they're missing the big picture of this football game. They needed every opportunity to try and do something. The defense was keeping them in it. It
Mhm.
just didn't work. I mean, would I have gone for? Should they maybe have kicked a field goal from the 5 yard line? Maybe. Okay. Uh, or maybe on a different play call. But I don't think going for it was reckless in those situations. And somebody who just wants to put those numbers out there, again, you're oversimplifying the situation from what you're looking at. Gamble said it. There were some weird situations like that early on. You're not going to go for a field goal that far away. And as you said, and as Campbell said, if just one or two things work, you're looking at a very different situation. If he hits Brock right at the goal line on that fourth down play, it's a different story. So I don't think it's too much, and I don't think it was careless. And it's just don't oversimplify it.
Yeah. I mean, you change two plays in this game. You change that he doesn't throw the ball to St. Brown and throws it to Brock Wright instead. Now you've got a tie game.
Yeah, there
And
you
then
go.
you change the completely awful defensive pass interference, and you've got the Lions getting the ball back, only needing a field goal
So
to
there
win
you
that game.
go. All right, let's talk about Dan Campbell taking over play calling. You got to remind people, it's not a magic wand. It looked good in Washington, but we caution people coming out of Washington, hey, Philly's going to be a different animal. It's not going to be, they're not going to just score 45 points all the time. I still think it's the right move. I still think he does it the rest of the season, James, because because I think the offense looked better with him against Washington, but also it felt like there was a rhythm in place. I know it didn't go well in Philadelphia, but you don't want to overreact and just knee jerk. Oh, that didn't work one week. Let's go back. And you know what? Campbell's getting that feel again for the play calling. It was only week two doing this after not doing this for a long time. So I still think it's the right move for them to make that change.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he hasn't called the plays since his first season as the Lions head coach when he took over for Anthony Lynn.
Yeah.
So there was going to be some rust. The rust didn't show against the Commanders because the Commanders were not a good team. The rust showed a little bit against the Eagles. And hopefully you shake that off after two games and he gets into a better, feeling of it. You've also got a Giants team coming up that's not great. So I'm going to guess it's going to look a lot better next week.
All right. Well, let's look at the overview right now. Believe it or not, the Lions are in third place in their division, James. They're technically not even in the playoffs if it started today. But you know what? They weren't in the playoffs after week one either. And the playoffs don't start after week one, they don't start after week 11. That's the reason you play a whole season, folks. So I'm a little tired of that narrative that's coming out right there as well. They're currently in third place in the division at 6-4. The Bears are in first, and the Packers are in between. Uh, Lions have some things to work out. There's no doubt about it, James. I'm still picking the Lions to win this division. And it's not just because I'm stubborn and being a homer. If I look at those three teams, the Lions, the Packers, and the Bears, I still think the Lions have the best team. They've got to make some improvements. The offensive line is an area that has struggled the most from last year. And we've talked about this for a few weeks. We thought they might make a move at the trade deadline to add some depth there. Uh, but they believe they got the pieces to make it work. And it's going to take something to work there. But I'm sticking with the Lions to win the division despite all these things.
Yeah, I think that can very well happen too. You've got, all the other teams in the division have definite wrinkles and warts and all that. The for the Vikings, it's that JJ McCarthy doesn't he looks rusty. He looks like a quarterback who hasn't played in a year. Didn't he people say yeah, he looked great against the Lions, but it's like yeah, he didn't even throw for 200 yards in that game.
Right.
How's that great? So you've got that with the Vikings. Their defense isn't playing as good as it used to. Their offensive line, like the Lions, is not good. You've got the Bears. Their offense is looking pretty good, but their defense is atrocious. They, I don't think you go anywhere with that. That's just not a good recipe for playoffs. And we saw it exactly with the Lions when you have a really good offense and by the end of the season, because of injuries, a very bad defense. What happens in the playoffs when that happens? The Packers are a little bit more of an anomaly in that they just I don't, I don't know what's wrong with them. Like they've got all the talent, they've got a bunch of injuries and everything. They could be a team that I could see winning this division, and they could be a team that I could see just completely falling apart in the second half of the season too. I don't. They're the wild card, I think, in this division.
Yeah.
The Lions, I think, are the best team from top to bottom, especially if they can tighten things up on special teams. Um, and so I think that it's very attainable to win this division. And you win the division, you're automatically in. So that's got to be their first priority right now.
And I think that's going to, I mean, obviously, 1 week at a time. We'll talk about the Giants in our next episode, and that's the game you got to focus on. But the Lions have to beat the Packers on Thanksgiving. That's a must win at this point if they're going to try and take this division because losing, I mean, you already, the Packers have a tie, so you don't really have to worry about the head to head tiebreaker because that will not factor in. But you don't want to lose another game ground to a division opponent. So got to beat the Giants, got to beat the Packers if they're going to have a shot at that. The Bears'
Mhm.
schedule gets severely more difficult going forward. They play
Yes.
the Steelers, Eagles, Packers, Browns, Packers, 49ers, Lions. So, they're going to lose a few games there. Lions are the most talented. They're going to have to figure some things out on offense and make some adjustments with that coaching staff and the head coach. I have a lot of confidence that they can figure it out with the defense playing as well as it is. Um, that's keeping them in things. I mean, they played horrible on offense against the Vikings and against the Eagles, and they lost each game by one score. And again, we talked about the Eagles, Super Bowl champs on the road and in those conditions, and it was still a one-score game. So the defense is coming to play. Calvin Shepard is coordinating like crazy, and so don't count them out. The spotlight's been avoided. I said if they were to win, the spotlight would be on them, and they didn't, so it's not on them, and I'm okay with that. And here's the thing: you don't need to be peaking right now. Now, again, I wouldn't be opposed to us winning a bunch of games right now and winning 3 or 4 in a row. But how many games did we win in a row last year? Right, and we won a bunch of them despite injuries and stuff. Uh, this tests you more and more, and you just got to get in. And that's why I said even before like last week, I just want to win this division. If the Lions can win this division, and like you said, it automatically gets you in, gets you a home playoff game. That's all you need to worry about. There's some really good teams in the NFC. We'll let all those seeding things take care of themselves. You just have to get in, take care of this division. It's going to start with the Giants game and then Thanksgiving. Those are the two. You got to be 8-4 after those two. If you're not 8-4 after those two, then we can start to have some more questions. But those two are going to be both really big games for the Lions at this point.
Mhm.
All right, James. Final thoughts before we get out of here.
One thing that was interesting, and I haven't seen a whole lot of talk about this, is that one thing that Dave Phipps said during his press conference, I think it was on Friday, was that he used to be Philly's special teams coordinator from 2013 to 2020. So he's got a long history there,
Yeah.
and he said that he was not going to be bringing his family. He
Hmm.
was not going to let them come. They often come to road games by the sound of it. And this was one where he said no. And the quote from him was, "You don't go there with the wrong color jersey."
Well, Megan Stefanski, Lions super fan, NFL fan of the year, said people were calling her boo, but I think they were booing, quite a bit wearing her Lions jersey. Um, but you're right. There is that reputation. But I will tell you from some of the Lions beat writers, the things I was hearing was that the hospitality and the kindness was pretty good there. So I don't know. I mean, this is the fan base that threw snowballs at Santa Claus, right? There's that story from way back when. Um, but
And
hey, maybe
cheered
it's
an
not.
opposing player's injury and threw batteries on the field at the referees and
Yeah.
all kinds of things. There's a long history with Philadelphia fans not being the best. I mean, they're the best towards their own team, probably, but not towards opponents and towards referees and anybody who's not explicitly aligned with the Eagles.
But times change. Times change, and things may have changed there too. I don't know. I've
Mhm.
never been to a game in Philly, but there definitely was not a sea of blue in those stands, though, like you see in a lot of different Lions road games. So those Philly fans, there's a reason Fanatic's a mascot of one of the Philly teams, right, or of the Philadelphia team. So all right, James. Well, I think we've talked this enough. Lot to look at, lot to dissect. Big game coming up. Got to get right. You know how the Lions are after a loss. They try to make those adjustments and corrections, and they're going to have that coming up against the Giants. So, James, thanks for getting back from hunting. Sorry you did not get anything, but hopefully you do get something before season ends here.
That's all right. I'm used to it.
All right. Well, at least you had a good time. You got to see the Lions game, and hunters out there. Best of luck to all of you. I hope you get as many as you're able to get. Because that helps me with my driving on the roads. I really like it when I don't see deer on the side of the roads and have to worry about that. So best of luck to all the hunters out there. Thank you to Roaster Jack Coffee Company. You've been roasting incredible beans for over 25 years, folks. If you want some incredible coffee, go to roasterjack.com. Use the code LIONS. You get 20% off your next order. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please tell your family and friends about this show. Follow us on social media. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, as well as all major streaming platforms. That does include YouTube for the video version. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reviews. Check out more content and episodes at not the same old lions.com. Until next time, stay gritty, my friends.